coin that I think changed the landscape for numismatics in America forever. And that coin is the 1909 SVDB cent. So the 1909 SVDB cent was released in the end of 1909, but to understand its importance, we have to go beyond, simply beyond the issue itself and what we think we know about it, to the hobby as it was set up at the end of the 19th century. In 1893, Augustus Goodyear Heaton, a coin collector, published a monograph on collecting United States coins by mint mark. At this time, the United States Mint had produced coins for circulation from its main branch in Philadelphia since 1793. And for a time, coins were also produced at the branch mints in the South in Charlotte and Dahlonega. And there were ongoing operations at branches in New Orleans, Carson City, and San Francisco. But the coinage of Philadelphia bore no mint mark. But when the Philadelphia Mint's engraving department sent dies to the branch mints, they hand-punched letters on the dies to denote which branch struck the coins. Heaton took particular interest in this fact and made a powerful case that collectors should focus attention on collecting U.S. coins not by type or date, but by mint as well. And so, in his monograph, he laid out a very rudimentary understanding of what was available, what was struck, using the resources he had on hand. Now let's talk about the coin collecting hobby in America in the 19th century. By today's standards, the coin collecting hobby at the time was minuscule. It really began to take root at the close of the 1850s with the transition from the large cent and the half cent to the small cent. And this hobby grew in size by the end of the century to the point where the mint was creating proof sets and selling them with distribution numbers in the high hundreds and the low thousands. But by today's standards, these were minuscule numbers. The technology at the time imposed very real limits on collectors if they wanted to put together branch mint coins and complete sets, bringing in coins from the four corners of the country. It's just very difficult, as you can understand. Transportation was a major issue. You also had the fact that collectors couldn't necessarily communicate in real time with one another. And so all of this played a big role in collectors' abilities to complete sets. When the 1909 SVDB cent is struck, the size of the coin collecting hobby is still small. But for some reason that I will lay out here in our program tonight, the release of this coin and subsequent way the coin collecting hobby dealt with mint mark coins changed the hobby landscape forever. And I actually would make the argument that the reason we're talking tonight, the reason you collect coins and maybe got into the hobby in the first place, had something to do with this development. The allure and lore of the 1909 SVDB cent and other Lincoln cents cannot be denied. But what changed? I argue that it was actually the advent of this revolution, the penny board. So the penny board is something that is developed in the 1930s, 1934 to be exact. And the penny board becomes the way most general public people became coin collectors starting during the Great Depression and pretty much through the end of the wheat cent period, 1959, and further. The penny board had an organization to it that informed collectors of the different coins that they needed to buy or find to put in the board to complete the set. And it did not take long for most people to realize that there were some real scarce coins. The 1909S, the 1909 SVDB, more scarce, the 1914D, the 1931S, to name a few. Some of the early San Francisco mint issues in the 19-teens and 20s also turned out to be scarce if you're an East Coast collector. But the 1909 SVDB cent will remain in collectors' memory as the most consequential of the series. So let's take a quick look at it and talk about the Lincoln cent. So the Lincoln cent has been in production now for over 100 years. And it was designed by an immigrant engraver named Victor David Brenner. The coin is 0.75 inches in diameter and features a plain edge. The Lincoln cent was the first circulating United States coin to feature the portrait of an identified person. It was also the first cent to bear the mottos E pluribus unum and In God We Trust. Now, this Lincoln cent looks a lot different than the one we circulate today. Since 1982, the Lincoln cent has composed of 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper. The relief has changed. The design has been, I think, cheapened. It's undergone some redecoration on the reverse. Now we have a shield type. For 50 years, we had a memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, on the reverse. The standard weight of the current Lincoln cent is 2.5 grams. And so this copper coin was a little bit heavier. The Lincoln cent was introduced into circulation on August 2nd, 1909. And it entered circulation after about a 3-year period where there was talk that the United States would redesign the cent denomination. According to the resources that we have, the coinage actually began in June 1909, and Henry Weil at the mint cut the dies. The original finished design that Brenner supplied to the mint did not include the motto, but it was added due to President Taft's instruction. And Brenner was chosen Brenner came into basically contact with the government due to his work on the Panama Medal for President Theodore Roosevelt. And so Roosevelt asked Brenner to design a coin to honor the centennial of Lincoln's birth and continue his program of beautifying American coinage. But the Lincoln cent was not without its own problems. Even though it was approved by Treasury Secretary Franklin McVeigh and went into production, there was a sense of dissatisfaction not only with the designer's initials on the reverse. Brenner wanted his name spelled out and settled on VDB. The Treasury Secretary, I guess upon hearing complaints, decided he would order a stoppage of production so that they could remove the VDB. A B was supposed to replace the initials, but the mint felt like it would take too long to prepare the dies, so they just cut them off. In total, you have 420 proofs that Philadelphia struck with VDB. And in August of 1909, the A&A Secretary wrote the Secretary of the Treasury urging to retain the VDB initials, but it was for naught. The mint in Philadelphia produced 28 million of these, which is why the 1909 plain VDB is common. And the San Francisco mint struck 484,000. The 1909 SVDB was hoarded pretty quickly upon its release. And given the fact that we think of 484,000 as a low mintage, it's important to note that at the time, 484,000 was well beyond the scope of the coin collecting hobby. There weren't that many collectors. Dealer Lyman Lowe is said to have distributed a specimen of the new cent to his customers. And according to disgraced numismatic researcher Walter Breen, Bowie, Maryland coin dealer John J. Zugg had a huge hoard of these 1909 SVDBs, totaling 25,000 pieces. According to David Lang, who attributes this story to coin dealer George Fold, Zugg sold these coins about 8 or 9 years after getting them for about $1.75 each, which means that Zugg would have made $43,750 on a $250 investment, and you guys thought that the Mint makes too much off of its surcharges. So with the 1909 SVDB cent being in production and being out in the wild, and coin boards attracting new collectors to the scene, and the prices of the coins quickly escalating beyond the face value, it became apparent to the unscrupulous that creating a 1909 SVDB, either by applying a mint mark on a plane, 1909 plane, or by adding a VDB initials even on the reverse, would allow them to make a tidy profit. Therefore, it becomes very important for collectors to understand that there are only 4 mint mark placements on the 1909 SVDB cent that are authentic, and I will show them to you right here. And with these different mint mark placements, even a worn coin should be identified by these placements. You have on the third example sort of a thin large S that's slightly canted. You have an upright S right below the 0 in the first example, and you have these two kind of smushed S's, one directly under the O and the other one between the 9 and the left side of the 0 there. So these are the only mint mark places for genuine 1909 SVDB cents, and these are the first things that coin graders look at before they even bother grading the coin when they're trying to authenticate the coin at a grading service or a dealer looking at the coin before making an offer to a collector. This is very important for you to memorize these mint mark placements if you decide you would like to buy one that is not graded by a professional. So what happened to Brenner after he created the coin? Well, Brenner thought that by creating this great coin that he would have an in with the mint and be able to design more coins and further add to his reputation as an artist. He was taking several prestigious commissions off of the back of the Lincoln Cents release. He was also honored quite profusely by the A&A and the numismatists at the time. He became a member of the A&A and was, I don't know if the current term clout chasing really applies to Brenner at the time, but he certainly was going where the action was with plans of making it big as an engraver. At the same time this was going on, Roosevelt had shifted his attention to Augustus St. Gaudens and their idea of a pet crime to redesign all of American coinage based on like the great coin designs of Greek antiquity. St. Gaudens at the time of taking up Roosevelt's offer was seriously ill and in his last years and was unable to finish the project. We get the $10 and $20 coin out of St. Gaudens' efforts, but it was clear that he was trying to redesign everything from the cent on up. So Roosevelt wasn't completely tied to the idea of keeping Brenner's coin in circulation all that long. And if St. Gaudens had survived his disease long enough to finish the coins, we may not be talking about the Lincoln cent today as one of the great American coins. But it survived that. In fact, not only did it survive it, the Lincoln cent stood as an example of, or an archetype of how the rest of the American coinage story would unfold. With the introduction of the Washington quarter in 1932, the Jefferson nickel in 1938, the Roosevelt dime in 1946, the Franklin half dollar in 1948, and eventually the Eisenhower dollar in 1971, the die was cast that liberty would be taken off of American coinage and replaced by not allegorical figures of American greatness, but by great figures of American history. The Lincoln cent survives today, even though it's not worth anything in commerce, even though you oftentimes would see one on the ground and not even bother to pick it up anymore. It survives due to pork barrel spending on the part of the government and perhaps a lack of imagination on the part of Congress and the Treasury and what to do with our small denomination coinage. Yet, it is still one of the most important and widely collected coins in the American numismatic marketplace. From 1909 to 1958, you have a rich legacy of Brenner's original design, borne out in many double dies, repunched mint marks, and other interesting varieties. You have the 1943 steel cent, the famed 1943 copper cent. In the memorial years, you have another 50 years of numismatic curiosities and some of the great rarities of 20th century coinage, including the 1969 S double die. But the 1909 S VDB cent, for collectors of Lincoln cents or collectors of any type of U.S. coins, will stand out forever as perhaps the most quintessential coin of the American 20th century. It's a coin that will cost you at least $600 today in a very low state of good, up to $1,000 in AU58, and thousands of dollars for a choice example with original mint red color through the higher grades of the mint state spectrum. It's an amazing coin with an amazing story, and you sure can't find 25,000 of them anymore in one place. And if you do, you'd have to pay a lot more than $1.75 to get one. For CoinWeek, I'm editor Charles Morgan. I'll be back really soon, actually this weekend, with a video stream about Carson City Morgan dollars. You'll love it. Definitely want you to check it out, and I'll see you then.